Evening, everyone. Let's just put my coffee down. Oh, I feel like I've not made a video for ages. So here we go. Let's get back into it. Um, so the title of this video will be something like "Future Proofing Your Mastering." So what do I mean by that? Well, first, what I've been up to lately is going back to some tracks I wrote years ago, like 10 years ago, 9 years ago, 8 years ago, and then basically revisit them, master them up, and then the intention is stick those online. Probably stick those on Bandcamp. That's the intention. Yeah. So everyone can enjoy them. Now it's been pretty painful process, and the problem is. This is the main problem. So I used to do pretty much all of my writing and producing production stuff in Reason. And that was back in the day. So I was using Reason 2.5. And then I didn't really keep up with the developments in Reason, and I kind of moved over to just using kind of Reaper. Because obviously back in the day, you couldn't record audio in Reaper, in Reaper 2.5. Sorry, in Reason 2.5, these all begin with R. So in Reason 2.5 is basically a load of like virtual, like rack instruments or effects, and you just build these big racks, and you'd sort of route them into a virtual mixer, and then you'd record MIDI, and that MIDI you'd send that to an instrument, and then that you'd have like an insert, a delay effect, and it was great because it was a really quick way of sort of producing music, but you can like record a guitar directly into Reason or sing into Reason. Obviously now Reason's changed quite a lot, and now it's like the all singing, all dancing DAW, I would say. And I think there's also versions where you can use its plugins in your own DAW, and they've gone down that route. Anyway, I didn't kind of follow the developments of Reason, so now when I look at it, I'm like, some of this is familiar, but I don't really know how to use this, and I kind of know how to use Reaper. But the problem is, then all my old stuff is in Reason, and I've got a demo version, I think, of Reason 10, so I can open my songs, but I can't export any stems, any audio. I can export MIDI files, and I can hear stuff, but I can't bounce anything down, and I can't save any changes. So first problem. First problem. Now I was convinced, like years ago, I had made some stems, and a stem, I guess. I mean, a stem probably has a technical definition, but think of a stem as a chunk of audio, probably a WAV file or an AIF file, right? This is a chunk of music, and it might be vocals for your chorus, your intro synth line, your middle eight marimba line, and it may be like a limited part of the song, or it may just be a stem of the entire song, which may include silence, 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 then the marimba's playing, then silence, 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 then the marimba's playing, and silence, and that would be a WAV file. I would suggest this is the best way for you to store your audio, to future-proof your mastering, okay, rather than store it in proprietary software formats like, oh, this is my Reason file, or this is my Cakewalk file, this is my Reaper file. Because although I used to use Sonar. I think that was Cakewalk, and then Cakewalk kind of made a pro product called Sonar. So I used Sonar for a while, but then kind of Reaper came along, and it was so much better than anything. Like I then migrated away from Sonar and then into Reaper territory. So the problem is then, if you've got any songs or even any sketches of songs in like that Cakewalk Sonar format, you can't use it. And like sort of the computer I'm working on now, it's like 2 computers along from like the stuff I was doing 10 years ago. So I would say the minimum you need, if you're thinking about, I'm making, I'm ready to master a song, and if you want to future proof it, bare minimum, make stems of all your individual tracks, and B, make sure you've got a MIDI file. Okay, because your MIDI file will give you your tempo. It'll give you all the original like music, literally the, sort of the digital information that says, yeah, at bar 3 I'm playing a C major chord, right? All that information will be in the MIDI file. It'll also give you your cues if you're using MIDI to fire off samples. So even if you don't necessarily have access to the original loops you used, that the MIDI at least should tell you where that loop started and where it ended. You know, if you're using MIDI to fire off a sampler. What your MIDI will also give you is any automation information. So if you've automated the volume, what's that, CC7, you know, it goes down and it goes up and it goes down. That should all be within the MIDI file. And obviously a MIDI file is platform and software agnostic. So I can grab a MIDI file, I can open it in my Windows machine, I can open it on a Mac. I imagine you can open it on Linux, but I don't know anything about Linux. And 10 years from now, I would guess we'll still be able to open MIDI files. I would guess. Maybe not. Let's see. Yeah. So get a MIDI file, and most DAWs you should be able to export a MIDI file. Should be able to do that. Like Sonar. No, I don't use Sonar anymore. Logic, Pro Tools, Reaper. You know, all the big players. You should be able to export your MIDI information as a MIDI MIDI project. So get a MIDI file, and then work with stems. Okay. Part 1. Okay, I just wanted to do sort of show an example of, I'd say, like what's starting to look like good future proofing of your mastering process. So as you can see the date here, this is from 16th January 2008. So when I say tracks from 10 years ago, what was that? 12 years ago? But essentially, you know, we've got red rum. That's meant to be re-drum. So these are stems coming from Reason 2.5. So you know, and if you know Reason, you might recognise some of this language. Rex, which is obviously their loop player, and Redrum, which is their drum machine. Alien Player, Comb Synth, Phaser, Entangle, Git, Struct, Chin Pad, Triangle Synth Wave. So these are the stems of which I speak, and essentially I know that these are going to span the entire song. So these will include areas of silence, but it actually makes the whole mastering process kind of easier because you can just load them up in your DAW. Yeah. So then what I've done sort of recently, but just here we go, 7th of August, 12 years later, is I've made a new Reaper file and then just loaded these up. So let's just take a look at that. I must choose the right version. I'm still back in the last version of Reaper 5, although I do have 6. I'm finding a few little issues. I'm not being brave enough to move over to 6 yet, but 598 is really good in my hands. So hopefully just showing you an example will maybe make a bit more sense. Yes, I know, go away. So let's just look at the re-drum. Let me just press these buttons so you can hear the output. Let's just solo this. There we go. Sounds quite reverby, but in the mix, you know. So and again, as I say, this stem covers the entire length of the song. So we can see at the end here, that includes regions of silence. Okay, so that may be more apparent. Yeah, look at this Git Struct stem. So this is basically so there's a bit of music here. You can just hear that. That's all that's doing. And then there's like nothing, silence is golden, and then at the end here, And it just carries on. Okay, so that's what I mean, where you might have a stem that has lots of silence in it. Now, sometimes what I did in the past and what I sort of do tend to do now is I would chop this up. So if this was my sort of pre-master and this was like being played by a virtual instrument, what I might do is sort of chop this up. It's like, oh, we don't need that. That's just silence. And of course, this all takes up disk space. Right. I mean, a bit of a less of an issue these days, but we could chop this up, and then what I could do is then I could say just mix that down as a stem, and what I would say is like stem git distract bar 7, and that tells me that this particular chunk of audio starts at bar 7. Okay, so which I mean, it makes putting these like pre-masters together a bit more tricky. So say, oh, this, go to bar 7, import this bit of audio, then go to bar, whatever this would be, 90, 95 there, and then put this, this chunk in. But then it saves on disk space. So you've got that, ease of putting together your masters versus saving on disk space. So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Can we just hear this? There you go. That's a little preview of Liquid Dream. So this will be one of the tracks that will be on one of my I'll call it Abominable Archive or something like that on Bandcamp. Now, just although I've done all those changes, I'm not going to save that. So let's just close this project before I accidentally save it. With those changes, the one thing this is missing is that MIDI file, which would have told me the tempo. So that's a bit lazy of me not to have a MIDI file. While I'm just making this video, there's actually no MIDI because these are all stems. So although that tempo doesn't really matter, it's 108, I can see, so it doesn't really matter because all of these stems stem the entire length of the song, right? So it actually doesn't matter. If there was MIDI, I could use this feature, export project MIDI, and there's a few different options there: entire project, time selection only, or selected tracks, selected items. There's a type 0 or type 1 MIDI file. Oh crikey, I'm not entirely sure what the difference between those two. There's probably videos on YouTube explaining that difference, and it's giving me a place to put it. So that's how you export MIDI in Reaper. Okay. Right, I feel like I've just started to scratch the surface of this kind of going back and remastering old tracks. So what I'll do, I'll call it a day and call this part 1, and I'll just do a series of videos going through the process, because maybe me going through a real process of going from like an old art bit of MIDI or whatever in an archive, going through putting together the pre-master, the master, and the artwork, and then all the Bandcamp stuff might be interesting if you folks have never done that before and don't really know what you're doing. You guys probably know what you're doing, but there we go. Some people have just never really done this before. I've done this a few times, put stuff out on Spotify and Bandcamp and various other things. Obviously, back in 2008, I think there even YouTube back in 2008, maybe like a really early version of YouTube, but there was no Bandcamp. So I remember some of the tracks I'll re-put out on as archive. I remember definitely some of them I burnt as like ad hoc CDs I'd like sell friends. Oh, the good old days, bad old days. Anyway, yeah. So the other thing, I'm just so I've not put any sort of stuff out on this channel for a while. I've been doing a few just jam sessions, I guess, with my looping pedal, because what I realised was spending a lot of time down in the basement, like in the box, mixing stuff, mastering stuff. I wasn't playing, and yeah, for a musician not to be playing. Musician. an amateur musician. Yeah, not to be playing is not so good. So I'll try and post a few like little jams using my looping pedal. Just keep my hand in. All right. Any questions about the whole kind of mastering process, stems, yada yada yada? Throw them downstairs. Cheers.